It might take you a second or two, because it was slow running this morning.
Okay.
And I think had a conversation that started. And Sunday, and then. But he is coming, he is coming today. And we are talking about our meeting. Yeah.
We're live, thanks. We're live.
And I told him, you can not. So he could be here. So you, the two of you, come on 5%. And you know, when you walk. I didn't want to.
Yeah, but even if he doesn't. If he doesn't, then it's time to do
Yeah, and I didn't get it for them, might start at 9:30. He's coming. He's coming.
Thank you. Oh, a minute to go. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning. Sorry.
Good cafe. MST coffee.
Only the best.
Mhm.
Strong and hot.
There you go.
Carmel coffee.
Oh, excuse me.
What kind of coffee?
MST.
Yeah. Good to the lowest bidder.
Morning, all.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay. The time is 9 o'clock. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the MST Board Operation Performance Committee of December 12th, and it is 9. And due to the expiration of certain directives contained in the Director's Declaration of Emergency for State of California Executive Order in 2920, the Board of Directors, the Monterey Salinas Transit District will hold in-person meetings and via Zoom virtual meetings as indicated. So we are having the in-person meetings, and we will also be having the Zoom participation meeting. And do I need to get that information?
Jeanette, you want to provide that information, the call-in number and how to mute and unmute yourself?
That'd be
So
great.
to dial in. The phone is 669-900-6833 with meeting ID 845-0083-6234. If you want to raise your hand, it's -9. If you want to mute yourself, I'm sorry, if you want to raise your hand, it's *9. To unmute yourself, it's *6.
Thank you, Jeanette. And with that, I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. So actually roll call.
City of Carmel by the Sea,
Here.
City of Gonzales,
Here.
City of King,
Present.
City Pacific Road, City of Salinas,
Here.
and City of San City.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay. And we do have in the audience, I'd like to recognize Mayor Bill Peak from the city of Pacific Grove. So welcome, Bill. And we'll move on next to public comments on matters not on the agenda. Members of the public may address the committee on any matter related to the jurisdiction of MST, but not on the agenda. There's a time limit of not more than 3 minutes for each speaker, and the committee will not take action or respond immediately, but they may choose to follow up at a later time. So at that time, I see we have one person here, Bill Peak, welcome.
Good morning, Chair and Carbone, and good morning, board members. I've already been introduced. I'm the Mayor of Pacific Grove. I'm here to speak on behalf of my constituents in the neighborhood of Del Monte Park. It's a neighborhood that abuts sort of a set of dead-end roads that abuts on 3 sides Pebble Beach. And it's impacted dramatically by the change in the bus routes. And so I'm asking you to consider amending your recent change in the bus route to the Del Monte Park neighborhood. The change, it cuts off about 4 to 5 blocks. Some of it is a uphill climb for people in that neighborhood to reach the bus. And we have some disabled folks that live in that neighborhood. And I know they would greatly appreciate going back to the service for that neighborhood. I think it's just the route. The new route just skirts the neighborhood uphill, and I think I'm only guessing, but it probably takes about 4 minutes added to the route to go down the hill and pick up passengers within the Del Monte Park neighborhood. So thank you for giving it your consideration.
Thank you. And at this time,
Well, we actually have that item on the agenda out of respect to the mayor. I didn't want to say, stop and come back at that item, but I think we'll be on item 4.3. Later in the agenda, we have a presentation from our Director of Planning and Innovation, Michelle Overmeyer, who's been in contact with some of your constituents over the past week. And we can talk, I think then about what we're doing with the constituents who've reached out to us in that neighborhood.
Good.
okay. All right, and at this time, public comment is still open. Jeanette, do you see any hands via Zoom? And with that, we'll go ahead and close public comment then. Okay, moving on to item 3, consent agenda. This is to approve the minutes of the Board Operation Performance Committee of October 17th, 2022. And with that, are there any questions from any of the directors or corrections and if not, I am looking for a motion for approval.
Motion to approve. Yes, the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. At this time, I would like to take this out to the public. Thank you. And anyone from the public? And not seeing anyone? We'll go ahead and close public comment. And I did hear a motion, Tony Barrera, do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Director Barron. And with that, roll call vote.
Okay. First motion from Barrera, second from Director Barron. City of Carmel by the Sea,
Yes.
City of Gonzales,
Aye.
City of King,
Aye.
City Pacific Grove is absent, City of Salinas,
Yes.
City of Salem.
Yes,
Okay, thank you. The motion passed.
okay, thank
I'm
you.
actually on telephone.
Did
Oh,
I,
Joe's here.
Joe
Oh,
Mario.
okay. So,
I'm having trouble zooming in, so I'm on the telephone.
okay, so, City Pacific Grove,
Aye.
okay, thank you.
motion carries? So we will move on to the next item. This is an action item for one, and this is review of operations performance. And if you go to page item 7.1 in your regular agenda, you may find that item there. And Carl, you have the report.
Yes, I have a PowerPoint. Scott, do you have that PowerPoint queued up? Am I surprising you again this month?
This is your COVID update?
Yes.
Yes, all right.
We'll review this again in the full committee, or in full board meeting, but if there's some time, we can talk about that. So, well, this is the December 12th update. Next slide. Take the title page. So we raised, Monterey County raised our transmission rate from low to medium in the recent weeks. We're receiving notices of employees with COVID symptoms and positive antigen results. We're not getting, we only, per our directives that we've received, we don't count them until we get a PCR result. But no contact made with MSD passengers, no cases traced back to the work environment, which has been the trend throughout. All of our employees, both contracted and MSD directly, are in compliance with our vaccination mandate. All current employees have at least received vaccination and the booster. Whether they're receiving current boosters and multiple boosters, we don't keep track of that. We've passed out over 1,000 free day passes and rides on the MSD Rides program to passengers who show us their vaccination cards and their most recent information. So that's promoting our passengers getting well. The governor, as you all know, announced his intention to end the emergency at February 28th, 2023, which means that our March meeting will be held under the new rules. And we're going to spend some time at our January workshop discussing staff's recommended protocols for how we'll handle that in March. So if you have any changes when we present it in January, we can modify them in February and have something to you. Cal OSHA is ready to announce some new rules. We've made comment. As long as our association has, the comment period has ended. We're just waiting for the final rules to come out. And our Better Bus Network went live, as you heard earlier, which was really the culmination of your board's COVID recovery policy, was to restructure the route network. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on this agenda and later in this very presentation. Next slide. Ridership continues to grow with normal seasonal peaks and valleys, as well as peaks and valleys attributed to the resurgence of various variants. You can see right before the COVID hit, we were carrying about 64,000 passenger trips per week. We hit about 80% of that number in end of August, early September, which is our high ridership time. And we're still hovering around 75% of that. Next slide. There you see, how we've had to adjust hours of service and how that's impacted passenger boardings. A lot of that hours of service is driven by drivers. If we don't have the drivers, we can't provide the hours of service. We're trying to build back service. As we hire more drivers, we add more service back. As we may add more service back, we get more passengers. Next slide. From a cash flow perspective, you can see we're able to bank money as we used all of our COVID relief funds from the federal government, we were able to bank state funds. And we're slowly drawing down on those reserves over time. And the plan is that with the Better Bus Network, we will grow ridership and grow fare revenue to such a point that we won't be dependent on that. But it'll take a couple of years, we think, before we can get our ridership back to where we were pre-COVID. Next slide. Speaking of the Better Bus Network going live, again, it was the outcome of your board's COVID-19 recovery program. Your board in February provided direction to implement a new system that focused on faster, more direct service to those communities where demand is the highest and the need greatest. And we define need by levels of poverty, levels of carless homes, and persons of color in various neighborhoods. So before the Better Bus Network, you saw a distribution of about 50% of our service was, or a little bit more than that, was in the Monterey Seaside urban area, which includes from Carmel by the Sea up to Marina. 35% was in the Salinas urban area and 15% was in the non-urban regional types of routes. With the Better Bus Network, we've modified that to 40-40-20 split, 40 to Monterey Seaside, 40 to Greater Salinas, and 20 to the non-urban regional areas. And we've made, I'm not going to read all these for you, but significant increases in routes near jobs with 30 minutes frequency or better. And these areas of what your board was concerned with is providing service with equity in mind. We accomplished all this with the Better Bus Network. So overall, less travel time per trip on average, depending on the trip and time of day and where you're traveling from, but on average, less. And nearly everyone will be paying less for their fares, significantly less. And we've reduced our weekly, monthly, daily passes. But Michelle will give a greater overview of that later. That concludes my report for the month. Thanks.
Thank you. Directors, any questions at this time?
I actually have one, Carl,
Yes.
and you may not be able to answer this question until the governor makes all his decisions next year. But COVID is a part of our lives now. It's going to be ongoing along with the flu and all those others. Do you think that we will continue giving reports on COVID monthly like we've been doing for the past 2 years?
I'm so glad you asked me that question because it was my intent with the implementation of the Better Bus Network. This was the last piece of the COVID recovery plan that your board implemented. I was going to speak at the January meeting workshop to say, maybe we don't need this report anymore because it is now just, we've implemented a whole new system. And one of the other items I talked to the chair about that she'd like to cover in the workshop is reporting in general, and perhaps forming a subcommittee to talk about what do we report, how do we measure it, how often do we report it, what's useful to your board. So didn't mean to steal that thunder from January, but maybe you'll be thinking about it. And this has come up in the past, but we're offering a new service. We're offering a lot of new services like van pools and things that we didn't do before. And so it may be a good time to take a look at what we report, how often we report. And I'd love for this to be my last COVID update, because I agree. It's just a matter of, it's our course of business these days. I don't give the flu update anymore. Imagine in 1914, maybe they did, but so anyway, there you go. I'd be happy to get more direction in January from your board on that.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other directors? Comments or questions? And not seeing any, I will go ahead and follow up with Director Worthy's comments. I see that COVID, there is an uptick on with COVID in the county, and I don't think it's going away. So So we'll have to look at something by January. There may even be a whole new deal with the state on what the governor's does regarding COVID. Also, I know that the employees they've had their vaccination and then a booster, but we do know that, I think I've gone through about 5 of them now, so we know that from the medical profession that it's not going away, and these are going to be about vaccinations are going to be about as routine as your flu shot or whatever every year. So with that, that was my comment. So let's take it out to the public and see if the public has any comments on this. So public comment is open. And I'm seeing a no from Jeanette, so no public comment. We'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the directors for action. So
This was just a receive report.
okay, so this was just to receive, okay, and I should have my agenda in front of me. Okay, and then thank you, Carol. With that, we'll move on to the next item 4.2, and this is to receive update on Salinas operations and maintenance facility planning. And Lisa, staff report, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, members of the board. Lisa Reinheimer, Assistant General Manager for MST. Since last July, we kicked off our planning efforts with Stantec Consulting to help us with the Salinas Operations and Maintenance Facility Project. We're trying to accomplish a couple things with this planning effort. One is we're looking at expanding our Salinas facility. It's on a property of 2.3 acres, and it was bought in the early 1980s when MST assumed city-run Salinas Transit. And so over the last 40 years, we've outgrown our original size. So we need more space and property to be able to house our buses to better serve Salinas and the Salinas Valley. We also need to meet the acreage needs to comply with the Innovative Clean Transit Rule as we transition into our zero emission vehicle fleet and future. The second thing is we need to find a more permanent space for our contracted services, which includes MV operated fixed route and paratransit rides program. We're currently located on a couple small properties out in the Fort Ord area, which is leased by us to with the Army, and the Army basically wants us out. They're not kicking us out immediately, but they have expressed interest in having us not there. So we're currently planning our space needs with the MST team, as well as the Stantec consulting team. And so far, we've identified a need of 18 to 20 combined acres for a planning horizon year of 2045. So we met with the city of Salinas to identify general plan areas that would be suitable for MST operations, and the city staff identified 2 zoning requirements, the general industrial general zoning and public quasi-public as options for us without the need to get a zoning amendment. So MST will continue to work with city staff, but may need some help from our Salinas rep in moving this forward as we continue our conversations with Community Development Department. The city seemed less than open-minded about other locations besides the one I just mentioned. Also we're going through an evaluation of site selection goals, including a Title VI environmental justice analysis or equity analysis. And there will be a lot more to come as we continue our planning efforts, but we wanted to give you an update on where we're at.
Thank you, Lisa. Directors, any questions?
Yes.
Jeff?
Thank you. We haven't heard a lot about the MST's zero selection process between electric vehicles and hydrogen powered vehicles, so I'm not really clear on where we are in that process, like what decisions have been made or not made. And you talked a minute ago about that sort of weaving into this process of finding a site in Salinas, and I wonder if you could spend another 30 seconds talking about that selection process and the sites and how that's all working.
Do you want to take that or do you want me to?
Well, I can speak to a little bit of that. Certainly your board adopted, I think, a year ago, this meeting, a zero emission bus transition plan to send to the state. So state approved, which the state then approved the plan that your board put forward. And what we're looking at is a mix of battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell. The battery electric buses would run on the routes that are shorter. Hydrogen fuel cells would run on the routes that are longer, that exceed the range that battery electric provides. So generally, that means more battery electric buses running in the peninsula area where the routes and communities are a little closer together, and the routes are a little shorter, and hydrogen fuel cell technology in the Salinas Valley. We're still waiting for the technology to catch up to the state's mandate. The state mandated mandated that we adopt technology that wasn't quite ready for commercially viable. But we do need to prepare for it. Hydrogen can provide the closest to what our traditional buses offer, 300 miles a day. But it requires a hydrogen fueling station, which there are none currently on the Highway 101 corridor between San Jose and Los Angeles. Monterey County and the 101 corridor, the state has identified as a priority for getting hydrogen fueling capability. The per gallon equivalent, I think, would be $11 per gallon for hydrogen as it stands today, if you were to compare it to our renewable fuels that we use today, which are running around $4.50 per gallon. So we're waiting for volume to increase and demand to increase so that there's more volume that will hopefully drive down that per gallon equivalent price of hydrogen. Meanwhile, we need to plan for it because the state has mandated it, and it's about $100 million. We've calculated last year $100 million of unfunded mandate that we need to be preparing for, and we're kind of squirreling away in our budgets this money, a sinking fund to comply with the zero emission bus. I don't know, that was very long. I don't know if that would help you or not. I'm sorry.
So the Salinas facility would have electric capabilities and hydrogen capabilities.
That would be the plan, or we identify some public-private partnership where nearby, that would be my goal, or that is not my goal. That is a scenario that we're looking at. Does a private sector entity want to build hydrogen fueling that we could fuel at, as could the general public, rather than MST becoming, a hydrogen fueling provider?
So that's what you were talking about on that 101 corridor between San Jose and Los Angeles. So if through some miracle,
right,
someone opened up a hydrogen fueling facility, let's say in 5 miles from where this facility is going to be, would that eliminate our requirement to have any hydrogen fueling at all at the Salinas facility, and then we would be able to just do the electric facility?
Maybe. Yeah. And the advantage to that to a private investor, and I've talked to very preliminarily some private public partnership types, is we could have a base demand that they would be guaranteed because we're mandated. And then the risk that the investor would be making is how quickly does the rest of the market take off in the hydrogen fuel space.
So there are, I believe this year, the state passed mandates about trucks and hydrogen fueling as well.
Right.
So clearly organizations that drive a lot of trucks will have the same fueling requirements that we do, that MST does with respect to our long haul buses.
Right. So
so something will happen if the rule holds up and the rule stays in effect. This hydrogen is going to have to be somewhere.
Right. And we're looking at a major production facility in Mendota, which is only about 2 hours from here. That could be a source for us to deliver hydrogen to us. So you can manufacture your own hydrogen. It generally requires a lot of water, which isn't something that we want to get into here. Or you can have it delivered like you have fuel delivered today. So one model that we're looking strongly at is just having hydrogen delivered to us. And with a major production facility planned to be built just a couple hours away, that could be an affordable source for us in the future. And it's a company called, I believe, Green Power, something like that, is looking at constructing a facility within the next couple of years to open up in Mendota. So that's where we're putting our hopes on as far as fuel delivery. Now, whether that's delivered to a private dispensary or our own dispensary, that needs to still further develop. I'd rather not personally, I wouldn't recommend to the board to get into the hydrogen business.
The dispensary business.
Yeah, the dispensary.
Not that, the
Right.
dispensary business or the production
Yeah.
business, but even the dispensary business.
Unless the prices come down, it's not going to be our entire fleet like today. Our entire fleet is diesel, and it makes sense. But it'll be just a portion of a fleet and a portion of the service area. So I don't, we need to plan it out. And that's part of the exercise that Lisa's going through, is to help walk us through. Maybe my notions are wrong. So we're having experts walk us through that process, and then they'll walk the board through the process as well to make certain that we're making the best long-term decision in the hydrogen space.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then, although I'm reporting on this, we have an internal MST team with expertise like Norm Tuitavuki, who's also keyed into, in fact, he's at a ZEB conference right now online. That's why he's not here, but keyed into all of these different areas of expertise to help guide the project.
Thank you, Lisa. Director Ferrer?
Yes, I mean, this is exciting. I mean, it's very complex, but we're moving into a whole different dynamic on this earth. But why Mendota? I'm just kind of curious. What is happening over there?
I have no idea.
Oh, 'cause
They
that's
just sent out a press release. The
Wow.
company said they were building this. It got approved. They had the environmental clearance.
That's great.
They were able to, somehow make it happen.
Yeah, like Salinas, so we're trying to make it happen.
I hear it's happening in Soledad, but
Yes, thank you, Carl.
that's what the sign says when I drive by.
Director Labar.
Thank you, Chair. So a few comments on this. One is King City. I've spoke to our city manager. We actually have some land. We did a preliminary study on our water availability. Hydrogen production could happen in King City. So please keep that in mind as you have your discussions. Secondly, we had a rail conference and spoke with Chad Edison, and their desire is for hydrogen rail cars along this lower Central Coast portion. So we're seeing other agencies and transportation models moving towards that. So any kind of coordination on that, I think, would be beneficial to all of us. We have identified areas where public, I hate using the word dispensary because that gets confused with the cannabis portion, but public retail outlets for hydrogen. We have identified some areas within our city. And my understanding is those tanks, yeah, you could just bring them in and they become your fueling station without a lot of physical infrastructure. So please keep that in mind as you move forward. And you can't hear me correctly, right?
We can hear you. We can hear
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, King City would definitely like to be looked at for hydrogen production for the Central Coast region.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for your comment. And at this time, are there any other directors who would like to come in or ask questions to Lisa at this time?
Chair Carbone, I have a comment.
Yes.
Ms. Reinheimer, today I'm meeting with the city manager and the city attorney at 3 p.m. If there are specifics how this representative, MSC representative can assist, if you could please email me some specifics that I can ask. That way we get down business on that, and because the only way I can get involved is if you let me know. Otherwise, city staff does their thing and then they report out to city council later on. But if you want me to get involved in that assisting, please send me some information before 3 o'clock.
Sure, for our purposes, we had one conversation with the city staff. It's premature to say that you need to, get super involved in working anything out, because at this point, there's really nothing to work out. I would say, however, if you wanted to mention that MST is looking to expand and serve the city of Salinas with a new facility, we're in the planning efforts and we're working with the city, and just to keep them, apprised of the fact that this is of interest to MST.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and if there are no other directors, we'll go ahead and take this out to public comment. At this time, public comment is open. If you could please raise your hand and let Jeanette know you'd like to comment. Ina? Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the director. So this here is a update only. Carl?
Yes.
Okay. So with that, thank you for your staff reports and the update. So at this time, we'll move on to item 4.3, and this is to receive an update on implementation of the Better Bus Network. And Michelle Overmeyer?
Good morning, committee members. Can you hear me okay?
From our King City facility.
Yes, reporting from King City. I had the pleasure of riding the new Line 34 this morning with Mayor LaBarre. I would say bright and early, but it wasn't bright. It was still dark out. So I'm in King City this morning, and this item is to go over the Better Bus Network. At your October committee meeting, I shared that we were working on getting things ready for the Better Bus Network to take effect this past weekend. And it happened. Some of you have received comments, inquiries, and complaints. So I want to spend a few minutes this morning reviewing how we got here and why we're modernizing our service. So as you know, we're calling it the Better Bus Network. And as Carl mentioned earlier, this is the final strategy in MST's COVID recovery plan. We hadn't done a whole network redesign like this in about 20 years, and a lot has changed during that time. What we found was that nearly half of MST lines operated once an hour or less, connecting small numbers of people to specific buildings or facilities. And these very specialized and very infrequent services tended to overlap with other lines, resulting in a complex web of service. As Carl mentioned, we did find that there was unmet demand for service in Salinas. We had been providing about 52% of MST service hours on the peninsula, and Salinas was only getting about 35%, despite having more people, jobs, and disadvantaged communities. We also found through this planning study that schools, offices, and many hospitality businesses had either closed or significantly reduced their operations, allowed more telework, or in some cases still today remain short-staffed. So our rush hour ridership came down more towards the midday levels. And we've also been struggling here at MST with our own staffing levels. There's a nationwide shortage of coach operators, and we're feeling that at MST. We just can't meet the level of service that our community requests because we simply don't have enough bus drivers. The Better Bus Network is a balance of providing service throughout the county with our limited resources. So at your committee's June meeting last year in 2021, your committee directed staff to focus on 3 priority areas. One is ridership over coverage, so focusing better and more frequent service where more people live and work, rather than spreading minimal service to as many areas of the county as we could. And I want to point out the Del Monte Park area of Pacific Grove falls into this coverage category. The bus stops in that neighborhood averaged less than 1 passenger boarding per day pre-pandemic. So it wasn't a heavily used area compared to other parts of our service area. The second priority that we were tasked to focus on is equity over equality. So that means targeting the areas that have the greatest need for public transit rather than spreading service equally among the population. And then, as Carl mentioned, the third priority was balancing service. So 40% to the peninsula, 40% to Salinas, and then the remaining to other parts of the county. So we developed a 50,000 foot level plan last fall, and that was finalized and approved by the full board this February 2022. So over the last several months, the MST team has been working to get that 50,000 foot level plan into operation. And that means taking a closer look at routing. In some cases, city infrastructure just doesn't support bus stops. So we needed to make some adjustments. So for example, we can't put new bus stops where there's no sidewalk. After many months of getting all of these fine details in order, we did put this service into effect this past weekend. We're now on a pulse system. So the buses come into the major transit stations in a pulse, and passengers can quickly change buses if they need to. And then all the buses will depart back out into operation. Under the Better Bus Network, we've simplified routing, and in many cases, passengers do have to transfer now. We're offering free fares through Friday. After Friday, the bus fares will be $2 for 2 hours across the board. So that's any route. Many customers will see an overall decrease in their transportation cost, as Carl mentioned in his presentation. I also want to point out that as part of the comprehensive planning process, we're phasing out the general public on-call services. Those are also referred to as microtransit in the industry. And this is door-to-door service that was offered to any member of the public in Marina, Gonzales, Soledad, Greenfield, and King City. While microtransit is convenient for some people, these on-call buses often get tied up for just a small number of passengers, and they're an inefficient method of public transit, particularly for the South County cities that are growing. So Marina on-call has been eliminated since the city has fixed route lines 17, 18, 20, and 61. King City on-call was also eliminated, and that was replaced by the line 34 that I mentioned, just started this morning. And then Gonzales, Soledad, and Greenfield on-call services will be going away later this year. And I want to distinguish this from rides. The rides paratransit service is still going to be available for the customers with the physical and cognitive disabilities that require that door-to-door transportation. So the plan that your full board approved in February guides staff in how the operations should run to be most efficient, effective, and equitably in using taxpayer dollars. The priorities are set by your board, and this helps set some boundaries when we get requests from individual members of the public or groups asking MST to change the routing. So we want to avoid going back to the spaghetti type of network that ultimately serves a limited number of specific trip purposes. And then I also want to highlight that we've had a good amount of public involvement in the planning process over the last 2 years. In developing the choices report, a passenger survey was conducted, and we asked for riders to participate in paid focus groups. 50 bus riders registered to participate, and about 40 actually ended up participating. Those same participants were invited to participate in another paid group to review the draft plan. We met with over 80 stakeholders, stakeholder groups. We had public meetings in English and Spanish, and we talked with staff at each of the cities. My staff report to the full board this past February has a comprehensive list of all of the outreach that was conducted. So I guess I'll just sum it up by saying I know that customers are still getting used to the change. Change is hard, but overall, the Better Bus Network improves service in Monterey County. As it noted on Carl's slide earlier, the total number of residents within a half a mile of MST service is about 20% higher on weekday mornings and 9% higher on weekday middays. And then the number of people of color near service is also increasing by about 26% in the morning and 11% in the midday. So I guess that kind of wraps it up, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. So at this time, I'll look to the directors, if any directors have questions or comments. I do see Mike LaBar, hand up.
And Joe Emilio has his hand up.
And Joe, good morning. Let's start with Mike, and then we'll go to Joe.
Thank you, Chair. First, I just wanted to express my appreciation to Veronica and Michelle, and also the driver Juan. I was amazed, the 30-minute trip around the city, it went way quicker than I thought. It was nice just to be able to have a conversation. I was very proud of the fact that MST, the route they put for King City, puts any residents no more than a quarter mile away from one of those bus stops. We had a resident this morning who was going to catch line 23, and she knows that the reduction in time on 23 is important. I believe that the board found the right balance on ridership versus geographical equity. And I absolutely believe that the shorter trips for 23 and the 23 Express are going to be important going forward. My only comment would be is, as we bring other cities online with the circulars, we may want to look at doing 3 weeks a couple times over the next 6 months to get people the knowledge base going more, and maybe coordinate that with a holiday or something. But thank you, staff. I really, really appreciate what you've done. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. We'll go ahead and move on to Director Joe Emilio.
Thank you, Chair. Just to appreciate the staff's involvement in putting out the public relations. I do want to just mention in regards to Pacific Grove that the bus apparently is supposed to go down what's called Patterson. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Patterson rather than Montecito. Patterson is a street similar to what I call Prescott Hill, if you're familiar with Monterey. It's steep, and there's a constant, if the bus is going to go down Patterson, it's a constant speed in regards to, because it's so steep. So I was just going to mention, if it goes down Patterson, make sure the brakes are working, because it's definitely a steep hill compared to Montecito. That was my only comment.
Thank you, Joe. Any other directors at this time? Tony?
Well, first of all, I want to commend Ms. Obermeyer and her staff. Really getting involved, a lot of people involved in these community meetings, which is critical to the success of MST. Also, my question is, you mentioned there's free rides this week until Friday? Is that what it is?
Correct.
That's correct. We're using a state grant through the Cap and Trade program, and we set aside enough, we estimated for 7 days of free fares.
Great, thank you.
And any other directors at this time? And if not, let's go ahead and take this out to public comment. So at this time, anyone from the public, I'd like to invite you out to the podium for comments on the Better Bus Network. Yeah.
We can bring a microphone to you if you would like.
Oh, right, I'm sorry, right here.
Is that a commentary at our presentation?
Yes, good morning.
Well,
Go ahead. If you
Okay,
could state your name for the record.
yes, my name is Ray Parsons,
Welcome.
and I think this concerns the #2 route and that goes down Montecito.
Yes.
Pacific Road. Well, whether the bus goes down Patterson or Montecito, I don't understand the change because there doesn't seem to be a time loss in it. We're talking about a few streets. Montecito is more like the center of the Del Monte neighborhood. It's been there for as long as I can remember. The bus has gone down there. But so what's the point? You take away 4 or 5 stops, but you don't gain anything. You don't gain anything in gas. You don't gain anything in time. But you lose those stops, and there's a lot of people down in that area. Once in a while, I guess, my wife and Janet here, who do use the bus on a regular basis. And to go over to Patterson, well, it's an uphill journey first, and it crosses Congress and David, which are very busy, which is a busy intersection, to get to the bus stop. Well, I don't know what else I can say except I just don't understand the change. If it had no material gain from it. You understanding? I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Janet Louise Wilson, and I'm a resident of Pacific Grove on Buena Vista Avenue. You have just removed the 5 closest bus stops to my house. As you can see, I'm blind and I have a guide dog, and I try not to use the rides program because I know how much more expensive it is for you folks. And in order for me to now get to my bus stop, I used to catch it on Funkston and Buena Vista. Now I have to walk all the way down David Avenue to Patterson and David. There are no sidewalks the entire route. So it is not very safe. There's also a gentleman in my neighborhood who uses a wheelchair. He's going to have the same issues I have. And I can't go up Funkston. I understand there might be a new stop there when it turns right. But I haven't yet found that stop. But that I can't go up Funkston because Funkston is extremely narrow. The traffic is extremely bad. I even changed veterinarians because the vet is right at the top of that hill. Just a short walk, but I can't go there because it's too unsafe. So I guess what I'm saying is that I really want the bus to return to that Del Monte Park neighborhood. I totally agree with what our city councilman just said about that steepness of the Patterson Hill. I think it's, I've ridden on the buses to know that sometimes the mechanical safety varies. I'm not comfortable going down that hill on the bus, and I'd rather see it go down Montecito. A friend of mine gave me a ride home the other day, and I asked her to drive the two routes. It was 3 minutes to go to the left on Funkston, down Montecito, then back up David to the Patterson stop, whereas opposed it was 1 minute driving time to do it the other way. So you've cut out the entire neighborhood and 5 bus stops to save, 2 minutes or less. And I'd like to see it go back. I also, the other day, I've ridden the bus. It was called it's extremely confusing, the numbering system. There seems to be a 1 now that goes up to that neighborhood. And that took me to Monterey via downtown Pacific Grove and back. It added 15 minutes to my drive time, and then I go over to Carmel, so then I have to do the transfer the whole bit, and then I had to walk a long way in Carmel. So basically it takes me much longer to get to Carmel now, but the number 2 bus took me to Timbuktu and back. I went all into downtown PG, but right there on Gibson and Cynics, and then it went all the way around to Silomar, and it was like forever. So when I first started riding the bus, there was one that just came up David Avenue, did a circle around Del Monte Park, went right back to Monterey. And when that happened, there were young people riding it, all sorts of people used it. Why can't we just go down to the aquarium, transfer if we want to go, someplace? But please return my bus. Thank you.
Thank you. And public comment is still open on this item. Jeanette, do you see?
We're taking public comment on the Better Bus Network. I know some people walked in the middle here.
Guess I'll go. I've got notes because there's so much to talk about that there's no way I could
There's a 3-minute, just step by.
remember all of it. Patrick, live in Seaside, born and raised on the peninsula. I've ridden the bus for 12 straight years, but going back off and on in between cars, probably to the late 80s. These are the most drastic cuts, changes, and eliminations I've ever seen. Just because you want to increase service to underserved areas of Marina and Salinas, which you should, doesn't mean that we should have to sacrifice in return. This shouldn't be a zero-sum game. We shouldn't have to sacrifice for their stops. They shouldn't have to sacrifice for ours. I think this is going to continue to be a chaotic nightmare for weeks. Just because it seems to be going smoothly doesn't mean that you are not, that there aren't people who are struggling silently with these changes and eliminations to their neighborhood stops. The 11 Carmel to Monterey, if you want to talk about streamlining and cutting time, I don't see how you could get anything more convenient or quicker than the 11 Carmel to Sand City Seaside. There's a lot of people who work at Del Monte Center and in downtown Carmel who are going to be affected by that. You've eliminated 5 stops leaving Sand City for the aquarium on the Jazz A, 4 of which are in residential areas next to apartment complexes. I saw last week 3 people who were seniors, Latino. The lady that was the eldest was 80 years old in a wheelchair. I'm guessing she was with her adult children in their 60s. And I'm thinking, well, when this stop is gone, what are they going to have to do? Push grandma 12 blocks up the hill to Yosemite and San Pablo? I don't understand, why riding 2 buses instead of 1 or 3 buses instead of 2, which is going to be the case to leave Seaside to get to Carmel Valley, is more efficient than just riding 1 or 2 buses. The neighborhoods that are being cut out, which I think the lady before me mentioned, my understanding in the number 2 bus, the neighborhoods behind Safeway and Lucky's. I mean, Louis DeJoy was appointed by Trump, and he's been actively trying to destroy the Postal Service as the Postmaster General. And I sometimes have been wondering recently if the MST changes are one of his moonlighting side hustles, because I mean, so many of these changes make no sense whatsoever. And why in the world did you hire a company out of state? I thought it was just up in San Jose, but I was told by one of the drivers it was a company from Seattle to make all these changes. I don't think that anyone who doesn't ride the bus daily, or at least several times a week, and have been riding for years, understands the impact this is going to have on these.
Hi.
Was that my signal?
No.
To stop. I don't understand also how you can provide for our needs when you leave the 2 most important components of your business out of the loop. Meaning the driver and the riders. We're not really ever consulted in the route planning or the decision-making process. These computer models were being conducted, I think, in February and January of this year. The public didn't know. I've been told that there's been a lot of outreach by MST, but I don't know how you're not getting in touch with any of us, because I don't know anyone who, knew what these changes were going to entail until like a week or 2 ago.
Thank you for your comments. 3 minutes is up.
Okay, well, I would like to see, the 11 reinstated. I'd like to see, the 18 reinstated, and, to take 3 buses to Carmel Valley instead of 2 is, I don't see how there's efficiency or convenience in that. These changes are drastic and radical, and it's going to impact a lot of people negatively. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, if you could come up and please state your name and comments.
Well, if I'm allowed to speak, I don't live here, but my sister is Janet Wilson. I'm Maggie Wilson Bowes, and I moved to Ireland, so I don't live here anymore, but I'm visiting her. And our brother, who lives and riding the bus while we're here, and our brother, who's 81 and lives with his wife, who's about 80 in Monterey, can no longer come and visit my sister because of the lack of the bus stops, because they just cannot walk any further than the bus stop. The bus stop she had, she'd walk 1-2 blocks down to go catch it, and when she get off an uphill and walk down again to her house. So anyway, that's as far as my brother and his wife could walk. So essentially, when I leave, she won't have anybody that can come visit her unless they use rides, which is very expensive, and everybody's trying to be conscientious not to do that. So anyway, that's why I wanted to. Do I have more time left that I can dedicate to the man who didn't finish, or does it work like that?
I don't know.
Sure, we gotta, I mean, it's up to you, Chair. I mean, he's had his 3 minutes. Generally, that's not how that works.
All right.
Works in the Congress.
I'd like to add is, as far as I'm aware, people who are going to go to Lobby Center or the Dunes now have to walk in from the street.
You're disrupting the meeting, sorry.
Okay. So if I could, we have Marzette is here in the back, and Marzette, if you could get these folks' names, if you're willing to. We have trainers, mobility trainers, and also a group called Navigators for our volunteers. and our mobility department staff can talk you through how the system works and as well as, there are other programs like our taxi voucher program for persons with disabilities and their care attendants, elderly people can use taxi vouchers or the MST Rides program, or even other programs like the Independent Travel Network. At least while we're in the initial phases of this, perhaps MST staff is more than willing to talk you through your particular trip needs on a one-on-one basis, and even ride with you. We'll do that as well, so that you feel comfortable making those transfers and those rides. So Marzette is, if you could raise your hand, there he is there. You can, if anyone willing to provide phone number, contact information, we can work with you on that.
Thank you, Carl. Would that public comment is still open? Anyone on the Zoom? Do you see any hands? No. Okay. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the record for any further comments. Yes.
Chair Carbone, thank you. And Mr. Sidorik, I do appreciate the information that you just gave these folks, because you know what, it is critical. I'm really impressed when people take the time to come to these meetings. And so you know what, I appreciate you sharing that information with them, and because it is called the Better Bus Network. So we want to make it as best possible for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And any other developers? And if not, I will go ahead and
we have Lynette has raised her hand, member of the public.
Oh, hi, Lynette. Would you like to make have public comment on this item, the Better Bus Network?
Okay. Can you hear us, Lynette?
No.
Hello? We can't hear you. We cannot hear you.
She's muted.
Raise your thumbs up.
You can hear us, but I don't think we can.
Correct. But connecting, she's connecting to audio.
There you go.
There we are.
Oh, wait, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second. Oh no. Oh my gosh.
I think
We can hear you fine.
Okay, I'm assuming you can hear me now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna go with it. I'm sorry. For some reason, the Zoom, there's no sound going through, so I have YouTube live on. So I can't hear you guys and it's delayed, but I'm just gonna go with it. I had a similar comment from the previous person. Basically, I know you guys are thinking forward and Better Bus and all that, but for us, I live in Castroville. My daughter goes to school and she takes that bus. And I've asked her how many people are on that, and she says 10 people. It's a 28 going to the transit center, and there's other students on that bus. You did mention taxi vouchers, whatnot. She's too young to do that because she's 14, but she does go to high school in Salinas, so she would take it at 7:20, be by school by 8 by keeping on that route. But now the earliest for Castroville is 8:44, so that's definitely way too late for her to make it on time. And we have another son that goes to school in Salinas, so we only have one car, so we can't split that. So the bus was saving us. First time writing that for her, old enough, so we didn't know previous meetings about this change or anything. So I apologize in not adding that comment, but I wasn't aware that it was going to change. So with only one route in Castroville, to limit it, it just hurts us so much. So if that could be reconsidered at all, I'd appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. And I know I'm on delay, so I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
Lynette, if you could send us your contact information to mst@mst.org. Send us your contact information and we can get someone out to help you work with that with your particular issues and see if there's anything else that can be done.
I will definitely do that. Thank you so much.
Email address will that work? mst@mst.org.
mst@mst. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, seeing no other comments, we'll go ahead and close this item. Thank you for all the comments, and Michelle for your staff report. Carl, I'm not sure, item 5, do we need a couple closed session? I don't see any.
Oh, no, there is no closed session, so we're just no items.
Okay, well, with that, at this time, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. The next meeting will be scheduled for February 13th, 2023 at 9 a.m. And at this time, we'll we'll adjourn and go to our regular meeting.
MSD board meeting starting right after this.
Okay.